Okay, so are you ready for a deep dive today? Because we are talking passion, purpose, that feeling that we all get, like we know we could be doing better. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
And to guide us on this little journey, we've got Jeff Bezos, Jordan Peterson, and Kevin Hart.
What a lineup, right?
Talk about a diverse group of thinkers.
It is pretty wild how all of their ideas, even from totally different backgrounds, kind of
Yeah.
come together around this whole owning your choices thing. Like, that seems to be the core. Whether you're talking about, like, building an empire or just, like, trying to get your brain to cooperate, you know?
And speaking of empires, can we just talk about Bezos for a sec?
Yeah.
That story about his boss practically begging him not to start Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, come here, a comfy paycheck, good benefits, I'd have stayed put.
Yeah.
But not Bezos.
Well, it really shows how sometimes, like, playing it safe can actually mean you're playing small.
Right.
It's not always obvious when you're caught in the moment, that tension of the known versus the unknown. But Bezos' story kind of makes us ask, what if this crazy idea I've got could actually work?
It's like staring down this massive half pipe, you know? It's terrifying, but also exhilarating. And you just kind of have to take that leap of faith.
And speaking of faith, Jordan Peterson kind of adds another layer to this whole thing. He's all about asking why. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Are you actually passionate about it, or is it just comfortable?
Yeah, like Peterson would probably say that everyone's capable of just coasting,
Yeah.
right? But to actually like level up in life, we've got to get a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, he's definitely not about shortcuts. It's more about taking ownership of your choices. Even the small ones, you know? It's not about waiting for a promotion or praise or anything external. It's about that internal satisfaction that you get from knowing you're striving for something more.
But he doesn't just like leave us hanging with the what,
Yeah.
He actually gives us tools. And it's fascinating how he looks at language. This guy talks about words like they're magic spells or something.
He actually calls writing formalized thinking. It's like he's saying being articulate isn't about trying to sound smart. It's about actually like clarifying your own thoughts, your values.
He even compares mastering language to like a martial art,
Hmm.
which honestly sounds kind of intense. But I get it. Because if you can really communicate in a clear way, you can advocate for yourself better, you build better relationships, you can even navigate tough situations better.
Right, because words have power. They can build us up or they can tear us down. And what Peterson is saying is that by mastering language, we can kind of take control of that voice in our head, our own internal narratives.
My mind is blown right now. Can we switch gears for a second and talk about Kevin Hart?
Yeah.
Because he is so refreshingly honest about, the not so glamorous side of fame. He's like, it's not all sunshine and roses, people. He even calls those negative impulses that he has monsters. And come on, we all have those, right? What are your monsters right now?
I love how willing he is to be vulnerable, you know? He reminds us that even the people who seem to have it all still deal with self-doubt and bad habits and those voices in their head telling them they aren't good enough.
We always see those highlight reels, the awards and the sold-out shows, and we think, man, they've got it all figured out. And then Kevin Hart comes in and he pulls back at the curtain. He's like, nope, I'm wrestling with these monsters too. And suddenly he's relatable. He's human, just like us.
And you know what's interesting is that Kevin Hart doesn't just complain about these monsters. He actually talks about, like, trying to wrangle them, you know? And it made me think about what Jordan Peterson was saying.
It's that whole owning your choices thing again, right?
Yeah.
Even when those choices are kind of messy.
Totally. Like, Hart's really open about the mistakes that he's made, but he doesn't just, like, dwell on them. He talks about how he tries to use those experiences to learn and grow, which takes a lot of self-awareness.
So it's like, instead of beating himself up, he's like, okay, I messed up. What can I learn from this so I don't do it again? Which is easier said than done, especially when there's a lot on the line.
Oh, absolutely. But that's where perspective comes in, right? Hart talks about being a little kinder to ourselves, focusing on progress over perfection, which, let's be real, is something we could all use a reminder about sometimes.
Totally. I mean, we could be so hard on ourselves. It's like we expect to be superhuman all the time.
Huh.
But these guys, Bezos, Peterson, Hart, they're all saying, hey, it's okay to struggle. It's okay to mess up. We're all works in progress.
It's all about finding that balance. You can strive for excellence, but you've also got to extend a little grace to yourself when you fall short, because we all do. It's part of being human.
Yeah, no, totally. And that actually makes me think about something you said earlier, the idea of connection, we over me. Because it's like when we're so caught up in our own stuff, our own struggles, it's easy to get kind of isolated.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Both Hart and Huberman talk about how rewarding it is to actually be of service to others. You know, it's like shifting your mindset from what's in it for me to how can I contribute to something bigger?
And it's not just some like feel-good thing.
Right.
It can actually have an impact on your success.
Yeah.
Like think about it. If your work has real meaning, if you're actually passionate about it and who it impacts, that's going to motivate you in a way that just chasing validation from others never could.
Right, because then it becomes about something so much bigger than just you. And it's pretty amazing how when you shift your focus outward, those monsters we were talking about, they seem to like lose a little bit of their power over you.
Yeah, it's like they kind of thrive in the darkness of our own minds, you know. But focusing on other people or a cause that you care about, it's like shining a light in those dark corners, makes them a little less scary.
That's such a good way to put it. It's not that personal growth is a bad thing at all. It's about finding that balance, recognizing that we're all part of something bigger and that our actions have an effect on other people.
Okay, but how do we actually do that? How do we find that sweet spot between pushing ourselves to grow, but also being kind to ourselves and at the same time being mindful of the impact we have on others? Like, how do we actually do all of that?
It's definitely a lifelong practice, and it's going to look different for everyone, right? But one thing that really stands out to me from all of these guys is the idea of choosing your battles.
Oh, that's good. Because we only have so much energy,
Yeah.
We got to be smart about where we focus it.
Exactly. Like Peterson talks about it in terms of personal responsibility. He says our energy is a limited resource, so we need to be intentional about where we're directing it. He uses that analogy of cleaning your room. Remember that.
Yeah, and it's not really about the cleaning, is it? It's about focusing on what you can control, taking charge of your own little corner of the world.
Yes. And honestly, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say no.
Whoa, wait a minute. Are you saying that saying no can actually be more impactful than saying yes?
In some situations, absolutely.
Wow.
We are constantly bombarded with demands on our time, our attention, our energy. Learning to say no to the things that don't align with your values, your goals, even your well-being, that is a superpower.
Okay, yeah, I see that. But it's not always easy, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know when to say yes and when to say no? Especially when it seems like everyone's out there hustling 24/7.
I think it comes back to those monsters we were talking about. What are the things that really trigger those feelings of not being good enough or not doing enough? Those are the areas where we need to be more careful about where we're spending our energy.
That's really insightful. So it's like figuring out what those patterns are, what those triggers are, and then actually making conscious choices about what we let into our lives, even into our mental space.
Yes. And being okay with the fact that sometimes saying no is going to be uncomfortable, because it will be. People might not like it. You might feel like you're missing out. But at the end of the day, it's about prioritizing yourself, your own growth, your own well-being.
Which, I mean, it sounds kind of selfish, but what you're saying is it's actually the opposite.
Exactly. Because when we're constantly running ourselves ragged, trying to make everyone else happy and do everything, we're not showing up as our best selves. We end up feeling depleted, resentful, and honestly, we're just not as effective.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup, we can't show up for other people or for the things that we care about if we're not taking care of ourselves, mentally, emotionally, physically.
And that's where everything comes full circle,
Okay.
When we're grounded in our values, when we're clear about our priorities and we're taking care of our own well-being, that's when we can make choices that are good for us and for the people around us.
So it's not like an either-or situation.
Yeah.
It's not self-care or helping others, being successful or feeling fulfilled. It's about somehow finding that place where all of those things come together.
Yes, exactly. It's about realizing that we're all connected, that my well-being is connected to your well-being, and it's connected to the well-being of everyone around us. It's messy and it's complicated, but it's a beautiful way to live.
This is great. You've given us so much to think about. But I feel like we're not quite done yet, right? Because we haven't talked about how to actually put all of this into practice. So stay with us because we're going to unpack all of that right after this. Okay, so we have covered a ton of ground here. From like Bezos going all in on Amazon, to Peterson and his tough love, to Kevin Hart's, well, surprisingly relatable monsters. My brain is kind of full.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot to take in. It's like we've been gathering all of these different puzzle pieces.
Right.
Each one is like a different shape and color, but when you put them all together, you start to see this bigger picture,
That's a good way to put it. So let's talk about that bigger picture for a minute. If we were to, say, boil it all down to like 3 main takeaways from all this, what would they be? What can we, the listeners, actually do with all of this information?
Well, the first one that really stands out to me is that discomfort is kind of the price you have to pay for real growth. We see it when Bezos takes that risk with Amazon, with Peterson constantly challenging us to be better, even with Kevin Hart wrestling with all of those monsters, like real growth. It doesn't happen when we're comfy, that's for sure.
It's like that saying, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. But it's not about, just going out and looking for pain for no reason. It's more about being willing to challenge yourself, to lean into those situations where you'd rather, just avoid the whole thing.
And those are the times when we really find out what we're capable of, when we surprise ourselves with our own strength.
So we've got to actually get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because the good stuff, the growth, all of that is waiting for us on the other side.
Yes, exactly. And that kind of leads us to the second takeaway, which is taking ownership, taking responsibility for all the choices that we make, even maybe especially when those choices don't work out the way we hoped they would. It's something we see in all of these guys' stories.
Peterson is all about that clean your room idea, taking control of the things you can control, even if it's just like your immediate surroundings. And Kevin Hart is really open about owning up to his mistakes, learning from them, and trying to do better next time.
It's about really shifting our mindset from being a victim and blaming other people or blaming circumstances and really stepping into a place of ownership. Okay, so we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond.
It's that whole responsibility thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be scary, but it's also really empowering because it means that even when everything feels totally crazy and uncertain, we still have the power to choose.
Okay, I love it. So we've got embrace the discomfort and we've got own your choices.
Yeah.
What's the third takeaway? Because I feel like there's a theme here, and it's all about looking beyond ourselves. You know what I mean?
You are totally picking up what we're putting down here.
Yeah.
The third one, and honestly, this one might be the most important takeaway, is the power of connection. That we over me thing that Hart and Huberman both talk about.
And it's not just about, being a nice person, right? It's about getting that at a fundamental level, our well-being is totally connected to the well-being of the people around us.
Yeah. It's like shifting away from this scarcity mindset, that idea that there's only so much to go around and we have to fight for a little piece of it, and moving towards this idea of abundance. Like when we focus on serving others, on being a part of something bigger than ourselves, it doesn't just benefit them, it benefits us too.
Totally. A rising tide lifts all boats. When we focus on creating positive change, on helping other people, it has this ripple effect that, it benefits everyone.
100%. And honestly, it can really help with those monsters that we were talking about earlier. When we're focused on something bigger than just ourselves, those self-sabotaging impulses tend to quiet down a bit.
It's like we're tapping into a different energy source.
Yeah.
It's not about ego or getting validation from other people anymore. It's about something much deeper and more meaningful.
Yeah, it's about finding our place in the world. And not just in terms of our careers or our accomplishments, but in terms of the impact that we have and the contributions that we make.
So this begs the question, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
How do we take all of this, embracing, being uncomfortable, owning our choices, connecting with others, and actually live it out in our everyday lives? Because, it's one thing to talk about it. It's a whole other thing to actually do it.
You're totally right. It all starts by looking inward, taking the time to really think about our values, what we want our priorities to be, maybe some of those patterns we've been repeating that really aren't serving us anymore. What are those monsters that we need to learn how to deal with? Where are we falling into those victim mentality traps?
Yeah, we've got to be honest with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
About the good and the not so good.
Yes. And then, once we have a better understanding of ourselves, it's about taking action. It doesn't have to be anything big. Start by making small changes consistently that are aligned with those values and priorities that we talked about, like choosing our battles wisely and being willing to say no to the things that drain us, even when it's hard.
And remembering that it's a process. It's not like we just wake up one day and everything's figured out. There are going to be times when we, fall back into those old habits, those old patterns. But the important thing is to just keep learning, keep growing, keep moving forward.
Perfectly said. We've got to embrace the fact that it's going to be messy sometimes, We're all works in progress. And honestly, I think that's where the magic happens.
I love that. And on that note, we are going to leave you with this. What does embracing discomfort look like for you? What's one area in your life where you can really step into that place of ownership? And how can you, starting today, cultivate stronger connections with the people around you? Keep asking questions, keep learning, and as always, keep diving deep.